It does. We're going to be talking about that through the lens of Luke chapter 20, beginning with verse 27. Luke 20:27. Sort of an odd text, but go with me on it, all right? Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him a question. This is Jesus. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her. And so in the same way, all 7 brothers died childless. Finally, the woman also died. So, in the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had married her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in the age and in the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore, because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living. For to him all of them are alive. Then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well. For they no longer dared to ask him another question. Let us pray. O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing and acceptable to you, O God, our rock, our strength, and our Redeemer. Amen. So in this text, it would seem that making small stuff, big stuff, is a part of the human DNA, right? Turning the small things that shouldn't be big into big stuff. At least in some religious circles, and probably throughout all community relationships, we're pretty good at doing that. And the Sadducees were one of those groups. They were a group that didn't necessarily believe in the resurrection, and they were a part of the Jewish religious hierarchy. And they were working to trap Jesus. That was their goal, to trap Jesus. And so you can, in your mind, you can see him over in the corner. What can we ask him now? What will we get him? And I don't know if they did that, but I like to think they might have. But they were over sort of plotting. How can we trap Jesus? And so they came and said, okay, Jesus, here's your one. We have a wife, and one of 7 brothers marries her. They don't have any children. He dies. And by law, technically, the next brother in line is supposed to marry her, right? So he marries her. He also dies childless. And so brother number 3 marries her. He dies childless. And don't you want to think that Jesus' response really was, hello, brothers, wake up. If you all are dying by marrying this woman, maybe you shouldn't marry her. Just saying. But the scenario goes that all 7 married her and died childless. And they're like, so, when they get to heaven, whose wife is she going to be? Jesus is like, who cares? Who cares? This is about the living, not the dead. It's about making stuff that's inconsequential big. There's a book, and many of you all own it probably, or at least know the title. Don't Sweat. And it's all. Isn't that true? Except Jesus did something to that title. The title goes, don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. And then Jesus says, except, right? So the Gospel of Mark, the account that's this story in the Gospel of Mark, goes on to say this. One of the scribes came near and heard them disputing one another, and seeing that he had answered them well, he asked, "So, what commandment is first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's no other commandment greater than these." Then the scribe looked at him and said, "You're right. You're right." So what is the big stuff? If the guy who wrote the little book said don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff, and then Jesus adds that word except, what's the big stuff? What is the big stuff? To love the Lord your God with everything you got, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's it. But back in the biblical day of this story, they had turned those two laws, commandments rather, into 600 laws. Over 600 laws related to just those two commandments. Isn't that crazy? What it means is you miss seeing the forest for the trees. You miss seeing the larger picture of what God intended, turning two basic commandments into over 600. We live in a society that is stressed to the max. We are on more anxiety-reducing medication than any other time in our history. And we have more therapists and mental health counselors than any other time before. Depression, rage, anger, physical violence. We all know that these are byproducts of a society that makes the two big things, makes everything a big thing, right? And Jesus said there's only two big things, but it turns everything into big stuff. A society that proclaims that you have to have it all or you're deficient. The search for the stuff that the world says that makes you feel better or happy, we must have, we must get, or we're not completely whole. Unlike all those who live in the poverty line or below, we are those who are seeking the big stuff that's really small stuff. Our priorities aren't quite in shape. Our priorities aren't quite in shape. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. Except love God and love your neighbor. I was working with a family, the church I came from, to prepare for a wedding. And I agreed to marry them, and she walks in the door, and I knew I was in trouble when she walked in with her Martha Stewart's marriage planner, wedding planner book. And she had it in her hand, and she was there to plan the wedding. She was expressing that her concern was over whether the floral arrangements that they were considering would coordinate with the simple plainness of this colonial Akron-style sanctuary space. They further inquired about the length of the service. This was crucial because they wanted to make sure they wanted to coordinate the opening of the bar and the serving of hors d'oeuvres exactly at the moment that the first guests arrived at the reception. And they even expressed concern about whether the bridesmaids' dresses would clash with the red carpet. Not gonna loving God or loving neighbor. Their anxiety levels were off the charts. They were off the charts, all over inconsequential, unimportant minutiae. So much so that I think that by the end of that wedding, she missed the forest for the trees. I honestly believe to this day that young lady missed her wedding day because she was so concerned about all the pieces and parts that she missed what that day was truly about. And contrast that to a scene from a marriage of over 70 years. Before I moved here, I arrived at the home of Francis and Mildred Smith. It was a dark fall evening, and the image through the front window offered an American Gothic kind of picture. The silhouette of the attentive and loving husband in his wheelchair sitting next to the hospital bed that was in their living room, holding the hand of his very sick wife. They were witnessing to the marriage vows in sickness and in health. That's the big stuff. But the reality was that Mildred had just died, and I was coming to pray and sit with Francis as they waited on the funeral director to arrive. It was 2 weeks earlier that I'd been talking to Mildred about our life journey. I had heard her story many times and shared in her story. And while I knew much about that history and all that it entailed, she needed to repeat it again and to share that story before she left us. You see, she was one of those that spent so much time making small stuff big stuff that she missed out on family moments. She was a perfectionist. She loved making things perfect. Not about whether the house was clean, but was it perfect? And she would spend hours doing that. And she said to me, I spent years worrying about the details. Is the house perfect enough? And I think I tried too hard to keep up with the Joneses and missed some key moments with my family. I'm glad I figured it out. What was really important, or I might have been dying alone at this time. Mildred and Francis both had learned what was really important, what was the big stuff. And loving God through loving her husband and her family, Mildred comprehended not only the gospel, but maybe the words of the guy who wrote that little book, Richard Carlson. He said this: something wonderful begins to happen with the simple revelation that life, like an automobile, is driven from the inside out, not the other way around. As you focus more on becoming more peaceful with where you are, rather than focusing on where you would rather be, you begin to find peace right now in the present. So there's some questions we need to ponder as we look at this. What do I need rather than what do I want? How am I blessed rather than how am I shortchanged? How much of my life is concerned with the accumulating of possessions and how much of my life is focused on building community with and caring for others? Do I spend more time considering what I don't have rather than what I do have? How would others who live in poverty look at my lifestyle? What can I do to alleviate the worries of others who are facing hardships much greater than any that I have known? You see, to love God, to love our neighbor, it's so simple, yet we make it so difficult. Richard Foster, who wrote Celebration of Discipline, said this: contemporary culture is plagued by a passion for possessions. More is better. The result is that the lust for affluence in contemporary society has become psychotic. We feel strained, hurried, and breathless. Christian simplicity frees us from this modern mania. People once again become more important than possessions. So who is married to whom in heaven? Small stuff. What car to drive? Small stuff. Driving a nail and a piece of wood to build a home for the poor? Big stuff. What floral arrangement for a wedding table? Unless you're the Edders or Sue Sander, small stuff. Gotta be careful how I say that. Serving at a table in a soup kitchen or helping a third world family plant a garden to feed themselves? Big stuff. My friends, let's not miss out on incredible opportunities. Incredible opportunities to share Jesus Christ. Incredible opportunities to witness to the power of who God is in our lives. Because we've been so inundated with the trees, we miss God's picture of the forest. And as we come into this Advent season, through Thanksgiving first, a time of blessing and a time of counting our blessings, a time of remembering, a time of being thankful. Let's be those who pause, really take inventory. Because as all of you know, life's going to pick up quickly here in the next few weeks. And as soon as Black Friday hits, it's almost like the gunfires and somebody says go. And people become crazy, right? And some already are, I guess. But it becomes very crazy. We take off and we're at a running pace between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And even though in the church year we have this season called Advent, a time of slowing down and preparing for the Christ child to come, it does not matter. It seems to be at a hairy pace. So what I want to challenge you to do is now, before you get into that crazy rat race, put your priorities in order. What is important? When you sit down with your family at Thanksgiving, what is important? When you sit down and prepare for Christmas stuff and the gifts you're going to be purchasing or the gifts that you're planning on or the parties you're going to, what is important? Don't sweat. And it's all except love God and love your neighbor. And it's interesting that this love God business, it's not just love God, but it's love God with all you have, with everything you've got, right? With your heart, with your soul, the center of who you are, with your mind, with your strength, your body, all of who you are to love God with. And then, love your neighbor as yourself. As much as you love yourself, love everyone else. Love everyone else. How do we do that? It's a question for you to answer. How are you going to do that this Thanksgiving season? How are you going to do that this Advent season? How are you going to be ready for a baby born in the manger? Your priorities aren't ready in order. Let's pray. Holy God, thank you for today. Thank you for this gift that you've given to us. A moment to stop, a moment to ponder, a moment to realign our priorities, a moment to say, God, we want to make you number one in our lives. Thank you, God.